Owing to angry protests, the King of Morocco has cancelled a controversial pardon for a Spanish rapist. But is the issue over now? What about the King's unlimited powers, including that of granting pardon? Paedophilia in Morocco and elsewhere. This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Mike Hanna. It sparked outrage across Morocco when it was announced, and now Morocco's king has revoked his controversial decision to pardon a Spanish man convicted of raping 11 children. In a deal struck with Spain's King Juan Carlos, the man was released after serving just 2 years of a 30-year sentence. Dominic Kane has this report.
This is the convicted child rapist, Daniel Galvan Fina. Until last week, he was serving a 30-year sentence for molesting 11 Moroccan children. Some of his victims were only 4 years old when he raped them. But on Thursday, he was one of 48 Spanish citizens to receive a royal pardon. He then left the country. It prompted angry demonstrations in the Moroccan capital, with hundreds of protesters confronting police. They were demanding Fina's immediate return to custody to serve the rest of his sentence. He had only been jailed 22 months before. By Sunday, the King's office had revoked the pardon and issued a statement saying they had not known how serious the paedophile's crimes were.
The principle of impunity is conceivable when it comes to pardons because there are some offenders who request it and deserve it. But there are others who undeservedly get released and go unpunished. The way pardons are granted really needs to be reviewed.
The original pardon is all the more remarkable because Morocco has recently tried to crack down on foreigners suspected of paedophilia. In recent years, paedophiles and sex tourists have targeted Morocco because of its poverty and relative closeness to Europe. Landmarks like Marrakesh's Jemaa Ifna can change from cultural centre by day into a place for Western child molesters to seek their victims by night. In May, public opposition to sexual violence against children prompted thousands of people to march through the streets of Casablanca. One study suggests that nearly half of all the complaints of child sex abuse in Morocco relate to foreigners. The case of this once pardoned paedophile has provoked moral outrage both in Morocco and in Spain.
We want to know why they asked for the Moroccan king to pardon this person and how it was possible to renew his passport so quickly, allowing him to travel to Spain.
Dominic Kane, Al Jazeera.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by our guests. From Madrid, Miguel Hano Murado, a political analyst and writer. From Bangkok, Dorothy Rosga, Executive Director of ECPAT, an international NGO committed to ending the commercial and sexual exploitation of children. And joining us via Skype from Rabat, Dries Kasikas, Director of the web journal Economia. Dries is also an author and playwright. Welcome to you all. Let's begin with Dries Kasikas. We've seen the angry reaction. Has the decision to reverse the pardon cooled down the situation in Morocco?
Yes. Well, I think what happened is a sad story, an error, and I think that Morocco has a strong civil society that voices out people's concerns. And what happens is that this is the first time civil society opposes a decision taken by the king, which is granting a pardon, because it's a social red line. Having a sexual abuser who has been for the first time, this is the first time in Morocco that a sexual abuser has been imprisoned for 30 years, and then 2 years later he's released in such a way, people couldn't accept that. So, but what happened later is that we knew that the king is listening. He's pragmatic. He's looking for reinforcing his popularity. So he aligns with civil society demand. But at the same time, this reveals drawbacks within the functioning of administration and coordination between the royal palace and Ministry of Justice. But because actually royal pardon is an oldish tradition, and it is a process where we find a lot of corruption, a lot of opaque ways of trying to get pardon, etc. And this is something that has to be reformed.
Well, let's just take a step back here and go to Miguel Morado in Madrid. Now, there have been reports that the Moroccan protocol officer who vetted the list has been sacked. But there's still debate exactly how Daniel Vigna's name got onto the list in the first place. What is your understanding? What influence was there from the King of Spain, for example?
Well, actually, this has been a source of embarrassment for the King of Spain, because this pardon happened, as you know, in the context of an official visit, a very important visit by the King of Spain to Morocco. And when the King of Spain came back, he, or rather his press office, was taking credit for the King himself for pushing forward these pardons. And then we learn about this case, about this man, the paedophile, and then of course the royal house had to backtrack and say that the king actually, and now this is the official version, the king didn't actually demand any pardons. He just interested himself in the state, in the welfare of those Spanish prisoners in Morocco. So we have a little bit of a contradiction there now. On the other hand, the Spanish government is saying something that, as I say, is in contradiction with this, is saying that actually in this particular case of this man, of Galván Vigna, they didn't demand him to be released. What they demanded was him to be transferred to Spain in order to serve the rest of his jail term in Spain. So there's still some confusion, and I must say some embarrassment, added to the fact that, of course, there are these reports that Galván Vigna, the man in question, could be connected in some way with the Spanish secret services, and according to some reports, it would have been the secret services who had included him in the list. But of course, again, the Spanish government denies these. So quite a lot of confusion about this matter.
Well, I'll get back to that point about secret services in a moment, but let me just go to Dorothy Rozga. The issue of pardons for offences in many nations normally expressly excludes sex offenders, in particular where it involves children, does it not?
Well, clearly we would like for pardons not to include child sex offenders. However, it does happen. It happens all over the world. Unfortunately, those involved with child sex tourism are very adept at getting themselves freed from prison, and many, in fact, most of them are never even brought to the criminal justice system. In terms of child sex tourism, there are about 2 million children every year who are victims of child sex tourism, and only a very, very small fraction of those are ever prosecuted. And as has happened in this particular case, those who are prosecuted, still some of them manage to escape the justice system.
Well, Dries Casillas, I want to get to a particular point, and that is that this issue involving Daniel Vigna is not unprecedented. In 2006, a convicted paedophile was pardoned after serving only 2 years of his sentence. So this has occurred before. Why the uproar now?
Well, it hasn't been made popular, mediated like it's the case for this one. As I said earlier, the process of pardon is not very transparent. So, and I think there have been so far no criteria for limiting the pardon. So this is what this case is allowing today, is to rationalize the pardon, make it even an exception. but for the time being, it's a bulk of names that are pardoned every feast. So I think the fuss that has been made around this case could allow us now to ask for more rationalization, more criteria. For example, no sex abusers, no drug traffickers, things like these. So that's what civil society is asking now for.
Well, Dorothy Rozga, the situation in Morocco in particular, it has been brought up before. The Hands Off My Child NGO brought up a report in 2009 showing that in 166 cases of child abuse in a year, the average sentence was between 4 to 6 months, and the average fine was between $1 to $7,500. It does seem in particular areas, in particular countries, particularly those who do rely on tourism, the issue of sexual abuse is ranked lower on the scale of criminal activity, is it not?
It absolutely is criminal activity. This is a crime against children, but it's committed all over the world, not just in Morocco. From the standpoint of ECPAT, we are very happy that there is an uproar about this case because it brings it to public attention. However, this happens every day in every country. Very few countries of the world are really prosecuting and giving the kind of sentences and requesting those who commit these crimes to make compensation. Very few countries are doing this at this moment.
Well, Miguel
and
Morado,
as I mentioned, if you have 2 million...
I will get back to you in a moment, Dorothy. But Miguel Morado, what has been mentioned too in this particular case is that Vinya was released from prison virtually immediately. A number of those other people who were pardoned are still sitting in prison, we understand, because they still have to pay outstanding fines. But he was spirited out of prison very quickly, moved, it was said, to a Spanish enclave within Morocco, and now apparently is back in Spain proper. It does seem that there were some outside forces involved to get this man moved so quickly. Immediately the pardon was made.
Well, that is the question, and that is what has been nagging the media since this story was known. What is the connection between this man and the Spanish Secret Services? This has been alleged. This is still not clear, but it looks plausible because of certain circumstances. The fact that the name we are mentioning is not his real name. This is a false identity that was given to him. He has reportedly claimed that he was in Saddam Hussein's army. This man is originally from Iraq, it must be said. He's a Spanish citizen, but originally he comes from Iraq. And he lives in Spain since probably the 1990s, where he was working for a university. So everything is rather strange about his identity, his story. And if, and this is a big if, he is connected in some way with the Spanish Secret Services, that would explain all these strange circumstances. The fact that he has disappeared so quickly, the fact that he was added to the list at the last minute, as it has been reported as well. And if this is the case, then it will also add to the difficulty of finding him in the future. His whereabouts now are unknown. Nobody knows where he is now, and well, of course, the police has to look for him, but first they need an international order. So lots of things have to happen before the police tries and gets hold of him.
Well, Dries Casikis, given the murky surroundings of the background of this particular man, one would have expected him to be well known to those who vetted the list of giving pardons, and also now giving added responsibility to the king for not checking thoroughly, as he said, exactly who was on that list. Is this calling into question this whole, as you called it, opaque process of granting pardons of some kind of extra legal activity which would allow people like Vinya to go free?
Well, first thing is that we take for granted what the king said, that he didn't know about the case. But him personally not knowing about the case is one thing, and the administration of the palace, who prepared the list, not knowing about him, is another kettle of fish. I doubt that they didn't know who is on the list. So now we're waiting for what the investigation will say. Second point is that even if he is a secret agent, I think that diplomacy, intelligent diplomacy, cannot, even with Western countries, cannot go over social and participative power today in Morocco. People are here and they are aware enough of what should be done and not done, not on a moral stand, but on a human rights stand. This is very strong, even if sex abuse is quite often the case here in Morocco. I mean, we know that there is sex abuse. There are all the time stories in our newspapers, but the fact that the name of this person was on the list is not something that's known by the people who prepared the list. But no one is doubting that the king didn't know.
Well, Dorothy Rozga, what we're hearing here is that some people would appear to be above the law, regardless of what crimes that they commit. That creating major problems, does it not, for those who are fighting specifically the issue of sexual abuse, and specifically the sexual abuse of children within that tourist format, within countries like Morocco and others, which place a very high premium on tourism and would appear anxious to keep what happens below the profile, a public profile, it would appear.
Mike, I think what we're looking at, though, occurs in many, many countries of the world. There's been a huge increase in tourism. In fact, 1 billion tourist arrivals every year. And so, of course, no country would like their country to be labeled as one that was promoting child sex tourism or allowing child sex tourism to take place. But this is the case. In fact, never, ever in the history of humankind do we have more children at risk from child sex tourism than we do now. The numbers are increasing on a daily basis. And it is very, very difficult to even get the numbers on these cases because they're clandestine. The activity is hidden. If someone is picked up for a crime of this sort, it's very difficult again to prosecute because there may not be jurisdiction in the country where the person is found. If somebody is brought to trial, again, difficulties in terms of the children who have to be witnesses, in terms of corruption, in terms people hope that this will go away, but it's not going away. But certainly no one wants to talk about this. This is something very, very hidden. It's a great crime against children, and it continues on a daily basis. As we're talking now, children are being abused in this manner.
Well, Miguel Morado, to what extent is the anger in Spain resulting from the nature of this man's crimes, as opposed to the process that took place, the king giving a list from some unknown source to his Moroccan counterpart? Is there a degree of social anger within Spain that a man who committed such acts was allowed to go free? Where does the resistance and the anger in Spain lie?
Well, of course there is, and not least because, remember, this man is now allegedly in Spain, and he can be dangerous. So there is not just anger, but there's also concern. But then there's also another element here, and is that, ironically, the issue of royal pardons, or pardons in general, is also controversial in Spain. Spain has a rather generous pardon system as well, not exactly like Morocco's, but very similar, and the government is seen as using and abusing it too generously and too selectively sometimes. And in fact, there was a controversy recently about a pardon granted by by the Spanish government to a man in prison. So this adds to the anger, or to the reflection, to the soul searching about the nature of pardons. Whether those pardons are, of course, they are an instrument. Everybody understands that they should exist, but there are questions as to how they are used, and the fact that the king was, in some way, which we still don't understand exactly how, but was behind these pardons in Morocco, has also raised questions, no doubt. Mike.
Well, Dries Kasikis, is this debate underway in Morocco as well? The whole nature of the system of pardons, the whole nature, what we have here once a year on Throne Day, this is the 14th anniversary on this occasion, where pardons are made. Are the public now questioning the very tradition?
Yes, they are. There are, and other manifestations are supposed to take place on Tuesday, and people are taking this particular case as a symbol to ask for a real reform of the granting process. As I said earlier, there is a lot of corruption going on within the process, a lot of opacity. I added to that, it's really the idea of the criteria is, again, something that is very important to take care of, so that it's not, it doesn't lead to injustice. And also, I have to say, the fact that there has been violence against protesters in Rabat when they were actually asking for not releasing the Spanish guy, and the fact that there has been such a violence make people still angry about the way things have been dealt with by security services. So they want to make sure that we will not do it again in the same way. And I have also to say that this process of granting has been reformed many times earlier, but there has never been any transparency. All the time we say there have been scandals around the grantings, and then we go back and say, okay, we'll change the people who are taking care of these things, but we don't know who are in the commission. We don't know how it works, etc. Well, and when you see the press release by the Minister of Justice himself at the beginning saying that, well, this is between two kings. This happened between two kings, and I can't interfere. In a certain way, there is also sort of as if he was not able to have a word while he was dealing with the administration of the palace when they gave him the lists. So all these things now are questions. So mainly because also the king asked the Minister of Justice now to find solution with the Minister of Justice in Spain. So I think the case has been so far that it allows people to ask for really more transparency and a real reform of this granting process.
Well, at that point, thanks to our guests, Dries Kasikis, Dorothy Rozga, and Michelangelo Murado. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. If you want, send your feedback by email to insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.